Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to cover the last book in Tamora Pierce's The Circle Opens quartet. So this is Shatterglass. So be sure to check out, I cover the first 3 books. You really do need to read in September I did The Circle of Magic quartet, which is the previous quartet. These aren't going to make sense without you reading those books. You can't, however, read these guys out of order because they're separate. So, in Shatterglass, we have Tress and Nico in the town of, and of course I remember, the city, more specifically, of Theros. Probably mispronouncing this, which is heavily based off India in their obsession with cleanliness and caste systems. So, Nico is there, eventually gets into me at a conference, and they decide to write a giant book. What happens with Tress is she's kind of there exploring the city, and she goes to their glass blowing. She thinks it's very, very interesting, and as do I. And she watches this guy blowing glass and creating, and essentially he creates a living dragon, glass dragon, without meaning to. And he starts trying to destroy it, and he's pissed off, and he's a very, very angry, grown man. And this is Keithlin Wilder. He had been a journeyman glass blower before he got struck by lightning. And now he had to relearn how to speak and a bunch of other stuff. Essentially, he was damaged, and he's trying to get his power back, only he didn't really have magic back then, and now he has, he's a lightning mage. So essentially, he realizes he created a living thing. She gets him in trouble. He's essentially told by Nico, basically when he realizes, oh crap, I do have magic. So he goes to talk to Nikolai and Goldeneye because he knows he's in town. And Nico's like, I don't control lightning. You have to deal with a 16-year-old. Well, yeah, so he has to be taught by Tress. He's a grown man. I believe he's older than her, which is different from the other books where they're teaching young kids. They're teaching kids who are not too much younger than them. In this case, this is a grown man. And Tress has to calm her temper because she gets frustrated with him really easily. It's like, you're an adult. I did this when I was 11. Grow up. But she has to calm down. Now, at this point, she's controlled her lightning in her hair. So her hair is in a variety of different intricate braids in this book. And she can draw on that magic. And so that's kind of important. And of course, she has this glass living dragon, which essentially bonds with Tress because lightning, and it's essentially made of lightning glass. And she actually she eats raw glass, or like glass pigments, and poops out and various interesting tiny little glass seeds like things that are able to be made into jewelry because it's liquid glass, because she's a living glass dragon. But the other thing that he's doing, and this is what happens because there has to be some sort of conflict here. There's a town called, and I'm going to mispronounce this probably, Kupak. And it's, in this area, it's part of what Tress wants to look at. It's not really a slum because they do have a slum of a specific type of lower class, which in India would be basically their untouchables. In the book, I'm looking at the map in the back of it. I'll show it to you. I love the fact that she puts maps on these things. I'm a big fan of that. So she has the Pantheon slum. Now these are specific people. Best corn, she's taking it from India's untouchables. They deal with the disgusting stuff, and the city is very obsessed with being clean. So what ends up happening is in this other part of town where you have a lot of courtesans, artisans, mentally street artisans in this area. Essentially, it's where you go to find a fancy prostitute, which I think they kind of take up a little after the she takes after the geisha, the Japanese geisha, or I think that. So that's essentially where she gets them. And Sandri, both her student and Tress have befriended some of these people because that's where he's living. This is where he lives in a boarding house with some of these women. He's friends with them. and one of them is murdered one night. And he creates, accidentally, without knowing it, these globes which are showing the murders. So they're, at first, the cop of the town is trying to figure out, it's like, did he commit it? It's like, no. And of course, Tress protects him and deals with lightning. They actually take him away and try to interrogate him, and Tress gets pissed off and encircles him in lightning, and she slightly frightens him. It's like, calm down, and they back off, because they were going to essentially use magic torture techniques, and she's like, over my dead body, and don't piss me off, I have lightning. So they back off. She also gets Nico, and the woman they're staying with pays to have a, basically, Nico is a truth teller, and essentially he's able to gently, whether put him into a trance or something, and basically prove that he is not this murderer, and he's not defiling the city. And that's the other thing. The head of the city don't really care that these people are being killed. They're killing these essentially prostitutes and street workers. It's that they're doing it and leaving the bodies in the rest of the city, defiling it with death. And they, rather than, say, if you look at magic steps back in Emmeline, how they deal with murders is they collect evidence. In this case, they clean up after it as quickly as possible, getting rid of it all, because you must get rid of the disgustingness, including, and normally done by this lower class, which has no voice, is mostly completely ignored. It's picking up the poo and making the city sparkling, and then pretty much living in slums and treated like garbage. Similar to, again, India's untouchables. Their untouchable class. That's what this is based off of. No, the author does not look favorably upon this. So what ends up happening is they are, along with this man who works this area. So these murders are his responsibility, because that's the people of his areas that are being killed. He's actually of the upper class, but he enjoys working in this area. He chooses, in a sense, to do this. And his own people start getting irritated with him because he's continuously working here, and he's not as clean. He's not following their religious stuff, and he actually gets in trouble and has to spend a whole 48 hours cleansing him, getting cleansed and prayed over, and it pisses Tress off to kingdom come. If anybody eventually, again, read Deja's book, notice how irritated Tress gets with some of these ridiculous rituals. Her traitor issues with that book, you kind of get, that's the reason you have to read those books first. You get the sense of personalities. Yeah, Tress is pissed off, because it's like, you're making a mess, you're not able to collect evidence because you're obsessed with this cleansiness. Essentially what happens is there's various other murders. They do eventually figure it out, and it was both a person of the upper, it was the former lover of I believe it was a male, of an upper class woman, and I believe she discarded him, and he's pissed off. So he's trying to defile their city. Now, he is part of that lower class. So, and he also despises the people who live in this part of the city because he thinks they're disgusting. And essentially, they're trying to, some of both Tress and Keith, I believe is just what it's Keithloom, the lightning mage. He lives there. And so he's friends with he's friends with at least, I think, one or two of the murder victims. In fact, one of them is abandons a little girl that Tress ends up taking care of. So she has a 5-year-old who actually is an academic mage. And so Tress actually has to start teaching her meditation as well. So she's looking after this small child and working with Keith, who thankfully picks up things a lot faster than some of her friends' students, because, grown man, as well as earning money to basically pay for his keep with his cousin working with glass, and them desperately trying to find these murders. And that's kind of the basis of the story. She's taking care of this. Tress ends up taking care of this little girl. Again, becoming an adult, teaching another adult who's older than her how to work with lightning. And he's afraid of lightning because he was struck by lightning. And he has to learn that, no, this can't hurt you anymore. It's your friend. You have to learn to use it, which is the reason he's stuck dealing with cranky Tress and lightning and her lightning hair. And she gets very pissed off. When she finds out who this murderer is, I think she entraps him with an earthquake. And throughout this time, she's drawing on her own, like, the energy she stored in her hair. And Nico gets pissed off at her because she eventually passes out. Like, you need to sleep and you need to eat because you've drawn on far too much of your energy trying to find these murderers, because she's pissed off. So is Keith. It's like their friends were being killed and strangled essentially with scarves. So basically then there's when basically the murderer is discovered, the town goes and it shuts down, and there's a massive scouring of this part of this city of Pantheon, the Pantheon slum. But before Tress passes out, essentially, she sees two of them, and she's like, listen to me. They know who's cause of this. They're going to kill everybody in your slum. Get back to it and get everybody out. And so that's what happens. A lot of people, the majority of this lower class escapes. And then, of course, the town, nobody's going to do the dirty work, so they have to essentially negotiate to get them back. So that is the basis of the story. Tress is dealing with an adult man learning glass blowing. She does end up with a small child that she has to deal with until she gets, I believe, gets her to Light's Ridge or Winding. I think she ends up at Winding Circle, because you do have I will eventually cover the Will of the Empress. And yeah, it will probably be in a couple of months. And it did take a while for that book to get published. So I will cover that. That touches on how things kind of come back together here. So that's the basis of the story. They're trying to find these murders. Their friends are being killed. And this is very much a critique on India's untouchables and their obsession with this cleanliness. It's not a positive thing. It's shown that these people are very, very stupid, and their obsession with this prayer thing, this obsession with being clean, is preventing them from figuring out who's killing people. And they don't particularly care about these courtesans. They're just pissed off that they're being laid in their city streets, their fancy fountains, and in front of various areas that are big public for their upper class. So that's what they care about. So that's the basis of this story. Tress, again, comes of age, similar to the other stories. She becomes an adult. This man, Keith, learns to come into his magic. Stop being scared of lightning, start using it, and becoming proud of who he has become, and get over some of his fears, and start being able to reclaim his glass blowing abilities and his working with molten glass, as well as the magic. So that's the basis of this story. And of course you have this cute little 5-year-old who's learning right alongside them, and a flying glass dragon. I enjoy this book. I enjoy glass blowing. If I could watch it done more often. So that's why actually one of my favorite, that and Magic Steps, which is the first one, are my favorites in this quartet. So that's it for this book review. Not too long. If you like this review, check out the rest. Again, I've covered the rest of the Circle Opens quartet. Definitely check out my Circle of Magic quartet. That would make more sense. I will eventually cover, she has 3 more books in this world, and I don't think she's going to publish any more from what I can get from her website, because Scholastic isn't interested. So you have the Will of the Empress, you have Battle Magic, and then you have Melting Stones, which are kind of separate. You do kind of have to have a familiarity with these 2 quartets for those to make any sense. Eventually, the Will of the Empress, which is bringing our 4 main characters back together. So that's it. If you like this review, besides checking out my Tamora Pierce reviews, This month I'm doing some Native American children's books, as well as some look at some Smithsonian resources for Native Americans and Native American study. Halloween covered a bunch of stuff. I covered all of Harry Potter starting back in September. It goes through October because, again, 7 books, 8 movies. It's irritating and long because it's Harry Potter. Cover a bunch of other book reviews, mostly children's classics, children's stuff. Covered some things like Dracula and Frankenstein, a few other family Halloween films in October. I'm covering some children's Christmas views. Why I try to speak. I have a small child and it is almost 9 o'clock at night. Children's Christmas movies that are non-religious, as well as films, and then a bunch more to plan. And that is my fussing toddler. So check out my channel. Thank you.